My principal objection is that it is not for the United States to create, I emphasize the word create, democracies. The area Christopher alludes to is a Kurdish independent region, which has a very different history from the rest of the country, and for which I think extrapolation is at the very least questionable. But leave that to one side. I don't think the United States should be in the democracy creation business, particularly when what we're talking about here is not regime change, not all this stuff. We're talking about war. And when we talk about war, what we're talking about is slaughter. However careful and scrupulous the targeting, however serious the people in the American army is very serious about these matters.
So okay in Bosnia, okay in Kosovo, but not okay
well, I don't
in
know.
Iraq.
I mean, not okay.
But I must have expressed myself very poorly, David.
Well, then express yourself better.
I must have expressed myself very, very poorly earlier, I mean to say, when I said, don't let's exaggerate, as the fanatics in the Middle East and the extreme conservative dreamers sometimes are liable to do here, as if the United States can just do as it wishes and invent places to go fight in and, or as you put it, monsters to destroy.
Charlie, people talk
or dreams to dream.
No,
the fact is, this confrontation has somewhat been forced upon us by Mr. Saddam Hussein. Wouldn't you at least consent to that?
David?
No, because it's not clear to me that this inspection regime would work. And above all, it's not clear to me that containment, even if he's cheating, isn't working. I mean, again...
So you think he's a rational actor?
I think he is... It is irrational to make war a first resort, which is what I think the administration is doing.
By no means. Look, everyone knows the administration is badly split on this. There's a big faction of the conservative movement that's very strongly opposed to doing this, and for very good reasons, that they on the whole like the Middle East status quo the way it is. They like Saudi Arabia the way it is. They don't want the risk of regime change.
Okay.
But
Christopher, let me, before Harold jumps in, is part of your argument for the war and the necessity of regime change also because you would like to see, as some will argue, a democratic state in the Middle East which can be used as a force to spread democracy among other regimes you might not like?
I certainly think, and I've continued to take the example of my own solidarity with the example of the Iraqi National Congress and particularly the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan. But we can't know that their victory is predetermined. Of course, we can't say, by the way, if you take my line, Iraq will become democratic. We can say it has a much better chance to do so, and its own citizens will have a say. But the crucial question, it seems to me, is that Saddam Hussein has refused every possibility, every chance of saving us from this confrontation. And is no longer, if he ever was, a rational or credible or deterrable person. He's quite clearly a wigged-out, sadistic megalomaniac.
I think,
but not the only one.
You have only to look at the speech. Yeah. Look at the speech he made on the Sunday. His poor, intimidated, crushed officials hand over this pathetic set of documents to the UN inspectors. The leader then makes a speech saying what we want is a common front of jihad with the jihadists
Harold.
Against the British, the Jews, and the Americans.
Harold.
This is a suicidal despot.
America is the world's most powerful nation, and its power will be used, and it has to be used, in my view. There's a choice. Use it to extend its power, or use it in a way which is consistent with a system of norms and values which it helped to create. And it seems to me that if we keep focusing on the ways in which the U.S. is a problem, we forget the ways in which the U.S. can be the solution. But I think what that means is that the U.S. has to act within the framework that, in fact, enhances its own soft power and promotes the kinds of values that it's most interested in supporting. And I think that means here, following a multilateral path, working within the system that it created. It has a unanimous Security Council resolution to this point, continue to work within that system, with the goal of ultimately trying to first to disarm Iraq without attack, and if that's not necessary, then they move to the next stage, but move in that direction with multilateral support, which then makes a post-war construction possible.
Who's arguing against you? To whom was that a reply?
Well, probably to me, Christopher. I don't see why you need to be to concede that much, in all candor. It is perfectly true that the dominant view in Washington these days, and perhaps among the American elite these days, is that American power is going to be used one way or the other. So let's, to put another version on what you just said, let's make it, let's put it in the service of a decent cause. I don't concede that at all. I don't see why we have to
put in the service of a decent cause.
I want the United States to support another legitimate state, Bosnia. it was, for me, an exceptional choice, not in terms of a war fought in the name of altruism. I've supported other wars on the basis of international law, as the Gulf War in '91, which I supported too. But I mean, those were war, or the war in Afghanistan, which I considered a war of self-defense. But the idea that we did it to get the burqas off ladies in Kabul seems to me just DOD propaganda. But but I supported the war nonetheless. But I do think there is an issue for Americans about whether we want America's mission to be fighting monsters, multilaterally or unilaterally. And that's the question I would ask you.
It depends on what the monsters are doing. When there is mass murder or ethnic cleansing, somebody should stop it. It doesn't always have to be us. It was the Vietnamese who went into Cambodia and shut down the killing fields. It was the Tanzanians who marched into Uganda and just overthrew the murderous Idi Amin regime. It doesn't. I'm strongly in favor of a division of labor. It doesn't always have to be us. But if it falls on us because no one else does it,
falling on us,
then
we're choosing.
When genocide is going on, anybody who can stop it should stop it. But that's not the situation in Iraq.
What is the situation in Iraq? I mean, where is it the point of difference with you and Christopher about the urgency
of
action?
The Genocide Convention could undoubtedly be invoked against Saddam Hussein and should have been invoked much earlier than it was.
It may be the case that we are already intervening in Iraq to prevent mass murder with the no-fly zones, the protection of Kurdish autonomy. But that means that mass murder is not occurring.
Such is already indeed the case, and unfortunately for Professor Coe, it couldn't be done multilaterally because not enough countries would agree that it was important enough. That's the sad fact of the matter. I mean, the no-fly zones do not have a UN warrant. The Iraqis indeed are within their rights to fire at those planes. I wish, of course, I'm sure Professor Coe wishes the same, that more countries had agreed to take part in enforcing the no-fly zone, but they didn't. So the question was someone going to do it or not? Or was there going to be another Rwanda on our watch in northern Iraq and southern Iraq too?
Well,
I don't think these are questions that can be very easily evaded.
I think it's a mistake to say that these are only American values. The fact of the matter is that what needs to happen here is a coalition building around a certain set of values. Wait, who said they were only American values? Chris, let me finish.
Who are you disagreeing with?
Let him finish, Christopher.
And I think the fact of the matter is that the entire purpose of having a UN is to address these problems collectively and according to certain common values, and that therefore when the U.S. turns to the UN, tries to get the UN to support this, to build a coalition, and waits to build this consensus, it's worth supporting that. However, I think the real question down the road will be if the Bush administration concludes we cannot disarm Iraq without attack and the Security Council wants to keep trying, I would think that the Bush administration should continue going down the multilateral road, since I think it's the only one that guarantees it long-term success in carrying out the reconstruction of a post-Saddam democratic Iraq.
But that depends on the behavior of the Security Council. If our European allies and other members of the Security Council decide to pretend that the inspections are working when everybody in the world knows they're not working, then unilateral action to disarm Iraq might be justified. But short of that, we should certainly make every effort to find a way to make we have to let the inspections work, if they can work. And I hope the Europeans will have some sense of an obligation to make them work.
Do you think the inspections can work, Christopher? And if so, where does that take you?
Well, some of us are prisoners of a certain amount of knowledge about this. Kofi Annan wanted the inspections, but he wanted them to be, or agreed to them, he wanted them to be run by Rolf Ekéus, a rather brilliant Swedish diplomat who had a proven record of success with inspections. After 1991, the regime, Professor Walzer said he was willing to go to war for. His appointment was vetoed by the envoys of France and Russia, who are indebted and or bribed by Saddam Hussein, on the grounds that he had a record of proven success. They wanted instead a man, Hans Blix, with a record of proven failure. These are the facts. Mr. Blix certified Iraq twice in the 80s and 90s. He certified North Korea, if it comes to that. He's put in by Saddam Hussein's clientele. This platonic talk about let inspections work seems to me to be so much piffle. They're not designed to work. If you're sincere about inspections, You have to be the government of Iraq in order to certify what you've got. So much must be clear. No one else